In this one, it's going to be straight negligence. It's going to be my third time building one of these DUI bikes. And you may be asking, why do I call it a DUI bike? That's just a name I came up with because of, in my area, you will see a lot of guys that lost their license to a DUI or whatever, and they'll create one of these bikes so they still have transportation around town, usually just back and forth to the bar. But so over here, I've ordered yet another one of these Chinese two-stroke engine kits, and you can actually get this exact kit on eBay still to this day for $100. I'll throw up a picture of it. So they make them in different designs here. And yes, I keep saying this is my third rendition because I've actually built this exact bike with two other versions of this engine in the past. The first time I did it was actually the 50cc, then I did an 80cc, and haven't really touched the bike in probably 4 or 5 years now. And if I can dig up those old clips of the bike the way it was maybe 7 or 8 years back, then I'll try to toss those into this video as well. Shit, I got her to start. The damn spark plug fucking blew out of the motor. Now it just sits in there. There's threads or nothing. But I'm not only going to be showing you how to cobble one of these kits onto these bikes, I'm also going to show you the weak points and how you can make one last. So without further ado, we're definitely going to start getting to work on this bike. You can see that in the previous times there's marks on here from when I used to have this kit on this bike. And this is my first time doing the 100cc. I'm not really sure how different it's going to be, but obviously we're not going to do the work down here in my storage unit. So let's go ahead and get it all packed away and then take it over to the shop. That's where we're going to start working on it. And yes, look out for another video here soon on the mini bike. I'm definitely going to be doing another Predator Ghost mini bike build. And then definitely look out for another video on the Virago, because I know quite a few people have been asking for a part 2 on the Virago, and that is coming soon. So I'm going to get all this loaded up and get on over to the shop. First things first, we're going to start with a couple tubes because both the tires are flat, and I know they haven't had air in probably like 5 years, so the tubes are probably shot. So got a couple tubes. I'm going to throw those in off camera. You guys know how to change bicycle inner tubes, and I'm sure there's hundreds and hundreds of videos on it. So I'm going to put 2 of those in. And then I also got some True Fuel 40-to-1, and I got a little 2-cycle engine oil too. I might just throw a little shot of this into there and mix it up just so it's more of like a break-in oil, but I'm sure it'd run just fine off of that anyway. Alright, we swapped out this popped inner tube. The back one's still good, so I'm just going to run it for now, but if it does pop, then I'll end up changing it. But the front one had a tear right there, so that's gone. Now we're holding air. So the bike is officially rideable again. It's extremely beat up and everything's crooked. The wheels are untrue. So I think it's perfect for an engine. Alright, so I'm going to do a little bit of an unboxing here and see what we got here. First things first, this is the CDI box, which this is responsible for giving your spark plug spark. And we don't really need that for now. We'll just set that aside. Right here looks to be the carburetor, which these things aren't anything special. It's just a Chinese carb, and they give you this little red shield. Sometimes they come black, but realistically you can go ahead and just take these out because you're gonna have more performance without this on. It looks like they actually give you a choke on the carb nowadays too, which they didn't used to give you, but again, we'll set that aside for now. We don't need that immediately. This is going to be the fuel tank, which there's nothing special about this. This is just a style that goes right on top of the tube here, and we'll just mount that there. But again, we don't need that immediately. We can start throwing that all on. The first things first, I want to get the engine on and mounted and fixed in place before we start adding any of the extra stuff. In this little box, they give you like a chain guard and some grips. Here's a chain tensioner, which these work fine, but I still have my stock chain tensioner from the previous build on there, so I'm probably just going to keep using that. This is the clutch lever they give you now, which to engage and disengage it, I guess, is this little button here. You squeeze it, and then you can pop that out so that it's engaged or whatever. I don't know. We'll figure more about that later on, but this is all different than the previous build because they used to come way cheaper than this. But let's go ahead and check out the engine here. So the engine gives you two mounts here, one in the front and one in the back. And this is one of the weak points here because you're just supposed to clamp it to the frame. Alright, so like I was saying, they have a mount front and back, and basically what it is just this little piece here that they want you to tighten on, and that clamps to the frame. It's a terrible design, so this time around I'm going to be welding some solid mounts. But in theory, it'll sit somewhere like this on the frame. Still allows play for the sprocket and the crank. But my plan here is to weld like a mount on each side of the frame so that we can bolt it solid to the frame. Alright, got the engine mocked up on the frame, and I went ahead and marked where the flat side of this sits on the frame, and also where the bolt's gonna sit. And I'm gonna clean up the parts of the frame. My idea is to chop off pieces of this metal here one by one, meaning the holes, and I'm gonna weld them on to the frame, something like this, so that those studs have something to go through and we can solid mount them to the frame. So I'm gonna clean up the metal. I'm gonna start chopping these pieces up one by one. Now we're just welding two solid mounts to the back side of this tube. Alright, we got the back portion welded on both sides. There's still plenty of thread to bolt it on. The front, we're not going to be that lucky because the studs are just too close to the frame. So to come up with that, I made these two little guys. They're basically just going to weld onto the frame right here, and then be able to bolt it solid from the bottom. In theory, solid mounting the engine is kind of what you want anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and mark these on and then weld them onto both sides, and then we can move on to the rest of the bike. Alright, we're fully welded now. I got it mounted here at the bottom. No, it's far from perfect, but this thing is rock solid. I mean, it is not going anywhere. And just as I suspected, you now can't even remove this engine even when you loosen the nuts, because the way that it's wedged in there, just wedged in there. So that's the way it's going to sit now for now on. Went ahead and threaded my spark plug on. I just put the clutch handle on. I'm going to tighten that down and start adding the clutch cable, which that'll come through here and mount to the clutch arm. The carb is extremely easy. All you do is slip it on, tighten this little 10 mil, and then plug your fuel line up. And yes, I already did take the cover off of it, so that's why it looks like that without the red cover, but that's just gonna sit on there just like that. And then I'll have to get my throttle cable set up right here, and then I got the chain, and after that I think we can put the CDI box on and put some gas in it and get this thing started over already. Alright, so we got the throttle tube just kind of loosely mounted up here. I'm just going to set the carb up really quick. You can loosen this up, this little top hat, which there's some adjustment there too. Inside you'll have a spring, and then you'll have your slide and needle, which you'll pull this out. You'll bring this little tab here inside of the slide like that. As you can see, it's on the center slot. I'm just going to run it there for now. Here, if you unscrew your top hat from the carb, you can go ahead and insert your cable through the top where it pokes out through the bottom. Then you want to grab your spring, and this can be a little tricky here. You want to compress your spring down so you can still grab the end of the cable. Don't lose your needle. You can hook it into this hole and then pull it up to where your spring sits into that hole there, and it's going to sit like that. Like I said, this is a tricky part for some people, but if you just sit there and work with it, you absolutely will get it together. And now you can go ahead and put your slide back in your carb, which there's a slot inside of the carb for this to sit in this little slot here. Go ahead and slide that down in, and you can tighten your top hat up again. Being careful not to cross thread the Chinese threads here. And then there's your carb there. So now when you hit the gas, you can see that your slide opens up in there. So that's that. Go ahead and slide the carb on. And basically your carb's set up minus your fuel line. You just got to put a fuel line and a filter in line of it, and then tighten our throttle tube, and the carb's done. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and throw on the CDI box here, which we'll go ahead and just mount the wire just so we know where we should put this at. I'm kind of thinking that I want to mount it up here. So now they give you this little mount on the bottom. A good idea for all this stuff would be to use some silicone, because believe you me, it will rattle itself loose. Or some Loctite. I'm using silicone. We're just going to go ahead and set up our fuel line and fuel filter, which this stuff is extremely cheap, but that's what they sent us, so we're going to go ahead and use it. So your fuel line comes down from there. I'm going to go ahead and cut a little excess off because it doesn't look like we're going to need all of that. And then I'm going to go ahead and cut that in the middle so we can include our fuel filter. Go ahead and push that over the ends of the fuel filter. They can go over the other end of your petcock here, like that. And it looks like I could probably cut off a little extra still, because you want this to all be a gravitational flow going down to the carb. If you have like a loop like this, the fuel has a chance to not be able to go up over that line. So make sure your fuel line is all facing downward. Something like that, basically. So that'll be the whole fuel line there. Here's the clutch cable we're going to set up here. We're going to drop this side into here and then run it through the slot. which if you've ever set up a bike brake or anything, then you'll know how this all works. I don't exactly know what this little piece is that they gave me, so I'm actually going to take that off. It's right here. Pretty positive I do not need that. So feed your cable back through the actual insulator of the cable. And you can set that in there so that it won't come out. Wrap the cable around to the right side of the bike. And there's going to be a little spot in here. Sometimes it's easier to do this before you set your carb up, so we can just set that out of the way for a minute. I feel like this portion could be bent a little bit differently, but in theory you'll slide it through this cable piece here, and then you'll loosen this and you'll slide it through your clutch arm, and then you'll tighten down this set screw onto the lever so that you can have a working clutch. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, because if you need to, there's adjustments up here and on the actual little cable here that we moved around. You can thread that outwards if you need a little more throw in your clutch, but we'll just test that there for now and see if we can't get lucky. All right, we got the clutch lever, the throttle on, the CDI box on. I didn't wire up the kill switch because I just don't really care for the kill switch. I might in the future, but the terminals that they gave you, they're so cheap and Chinese that they don't even fit into the actual terminal down here. So I just wired up straight connected. Right now we're just getting the chain figured out. I had to take off a certain amount of chain, about this many links from the chain that they gave me. But probably gonna have to take off one more, just because it's kind of floppy. And if I take off one more, I can loosen this mount or this tensioner down a little bit so it'll still fit. But after we get the chain on, I'm gonna go straight into throwing in some fuel and get this baby fired over. So another thing that I didn't mention is this is the sprocket that they'll give you with the kit. And how this sprocket works is they want you to put one piece of rubber down, line it up with the holes, put all the hardware and the bolts through here, and then stick it through your spokes, and then sandwich it on with your nut and bolt on this side. And it's terrible on your spokes, not that I really give a shit, but also the sprocket's huge. I want to say it's like a 52 tooth, which you can tell is a lot bigger than what I have on here. This is a billet hub mounted sprocket, and what that does is it mounts the sprocket straight to the hub so that your spokes don't have any stress on them. And this is a 42 tooth sprocket, so it gears it down a little lower for a higher top speed. But I don't even know if you can still get these things. I want to say I spent maybe $40 on it like 7 years back. But that's a good piece. That piece is essential in having these kits last. This is the exhaust they give you. I never liked running these little shitty exhaust pipes. I personally think like a banana pipe or some sort of an expansion chamber belongs on a 2-stroke. But this is all we got for now. But there's a 10 mil on the end. I highly suggest you pop that off and take at least that portion of it out so that it's open, because this is extremely restrictive. So normally I just run them open like that. All right, I just put some fuel in the line. Gonna try to give this thing a first start. I highly doubt it'll start the first try, but you never know. All right, so yes, we're fast forward to the next day here. Obviously, I'm in my work uniform, but I couldn't get the bike started on Saturday, so here we are on Monday giving it a go. All right. So as you can see, the bike is now running beautifully, and really the only trouble I was having was the clutch was completely loosened all the way out. There's a flower nut that sits on the other side of the clutch gear, and that was all the way loosened out, so I had to make quite a bit of an adjustment in order to get the clutch to engage. But nonetheless, that is the bike, and she rips. I got $100 into this thing, that's it.